Welcome to the Leading Results Fitness Podcast, interviewing some of the best athletes in the world, discussing the training, diet and supplement principles of top coaches, educating you on all the things fitness and business. Sponsored by the UK's cheapest supplement supplier, My Gym Supps. Find all the top brands and lowest prices at www.mygymsupps.com. Also sponsored by the only female subscription site, Pro Female Fitness, where you can find some of the UK's best athletes discussing their diets and training with an interactive forum where you can ask any question and the athletes will get back to you. They have a library of over 300 videos to watch and learn. Now let's hand over to your host, Rob Whitfield, with this week's episode.
Hi guys, and thanks for joining us again today for another Team LRF podcast. So today I've got IFBB Pro Wesley Vissers. I hope I pronounced that right, Wesley.
Perfect.
Wesley is not only an IFBB Pro, he also is a gym owner, a supplement owner, and also owns his own apparel company as well. So for a very young man, he has achieved a lot already in his life. So that's why I wanted to have Wesley on today. So Wesley, how you doing?
I'm doing very well despite the circumstances. As you mentioned, I am a gym owner together with my girlfriend. So for me, the routine hasn't really changed that much. But since we do own a gym and people can train, you still have to pay for the building, of course. So that's kind of like in the back of your head, like, please open very soon. Like in the Netherlands, it's very strict. So let's hope it's going to open very soon so everybody loses their stress of trying to keep their business running.
Sure, 100%, man, 100%. And we spoke about that a little bit off air. But let's crack on with your bodybuilding career, which you're most well known for at the moment. So, like I said to you off camera, I've been following your journey since the Arnold Classic in 2016. I saw you compete out there. I took a few clients out there and saw you compete. I thought, God, this guy looks really good. And there were already being some sort of remarks, comparing you to Arnold, and that sort of thing. And then a year later, obviously, you went on to win the Bergman overall and then go and attain your pro card at the first ever Two Bros pro qualifier. So I know you've competed now for 6 or 7 years. How has your preps changed, and sort of what was your first prep like to your last prep in Romania? What's the difference now?
Well, the first prep, naturally, I was pretty much shredded without having to do effort for it. So naturally, after training for 7 years, someone came up to me and was like, why aren't you doing any bodybuilding shows? Because I pretty much was already in bodybuilding show conditioning without realizing it. So he told me, I'm going to coach you for free if you're going to do a bodybuilding show in like a month or so. So I said, okay. I was just going to try it out. And he just gave me some, nutrition plan that was very easy to follow. But since I was already in condition, it was quite easy to stay in that condition. But I realized at the beginning that it's very difficult to also maintain fullness and conditioning at the same time. And throughout the years, I tried to perfect that. So sometimes the preps would be trying to maintain fullness towards the end, but at the same time, that meant the conditioning was kind of lacking. So when Classic Physique came around, I was like, okay, now is the chance to actually show the conditioning from the 70s, because back then I thought, well, they want to see not super dry physiques anymore, more like the classic line. So the preps were a little easier then, the carbs were a little higher, because I know if I'm full, I look way better personally than compared to if I'm really conditioned. So, but when I did that, the first time at the Classic Physique show, I had to drop my weight down to 108 kilograms. So I had to force myself to go down, because first I was a super heavyweight in the Netherlands before Classic Physique was even in Europe. So that was the only show where I had to force my weight down, and automatically I was quite conditioned for that show, and then I won my overall. But at the show after that, when my weight limit was upped because I was now a professional bodybuilder, I was allowed to weigh 4 kilos more. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to show the fullness and the roundness of back in the day. But that did, gave me a win at Chicago Pro, but not at the Mr. Olympia or at the Arnold Classic. where I did try to maintain a classic shape, but when you're at the elite level, they simply want to see conditioning. So that's what I did for the Romania Pro. I tried to really come in as conditioned as possible. By this time, starting the prep way sooner than all the other preps, allow me to lose the body fat way earlier, and then focus on trying to grow into the show just a little bit, nothing too extreme, to keep the fullness a little bit, but still be very conditioned. And that was my last showing, which I was very content by, because I looked the best I think I ever looked. And I want to try the same strategy for the Olympia coming up.
Sure. So you're still in your mid-20s, with you. So you would have grown up with mass monsters like Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Levroni. So what? Because those would have been the elite bodybuilders when you were growing up. So what then took your eye to the sort of classic 70s guys?
Well, honestly, when I first started bodybuilding, Ronnie Coleman was my idol because I saw his workout videos on YouTube. I saw how much he lifted, how much weight he lifted. And of course, when you're starting out and you become stronger and stronger, it's quite easy to gain muscle when you're first starting out. So I was like, well, if I continue like this, maybe one day I could come close to Ronnie Coleman. But after a few years, you realize it's not that easy. So then I came to realize, of course, after the first show, people already started to say, well, you look a lot like the guys back, like the guys from the 70s and such, like Arnold. They even mentioned Arnold at my very first show. I was like, okay, maybe I should watch Pumping Iron, because that's where Arnold, of course, is featured in. And after watching that, I realized, well, those physiques look way better than the mass monsters I see that win Mr. Olympia nowadays. So that's when I chased physiques like that. I just watched how they trained back in the day, tried to implement that myself, show other people how I train, infused with that classic knowledge from back in the day on YouTube, and people seem to like that a lot. So that's why I kind of like classic bodybuilding, because it suits my own physique. People started to compare myself to the classic guys before I even realized it myself. So I just embraced it, and it only paid off very well for me.
Sure, absolutely. So you were competing in the super heavyweight class as an amateur.
Yeah.
If obviously the classic physique division is still actually quite new, if you wouldn't have turned pro in classic physique, would you think you would continue as a super?
Yes, the last show that I won in the Netherlands in 2017 was the overall of a bodybuilding show as a super heavyweight. So that was my goal, to continue growing, but maintaining those classic lines, because I even did those Arnold poses before I even knew of classic physique. So it was always in my blood. So I just wanted to be like an Arnold-like physique, or just a classic physique guy with, you know, bigger and bigger muscles to become competitive in the pro ranks eventually. But I knew that would take a long time. But then classic physique came along, and I realized, okay, this is my shot to become a pro in this class, which really stands for what I stand for myself.
Sure, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. So let's rewind now to 2017. You hear of this divide, obviously, because over here in London, I can assume it was very, very much the same in the Netherlands, that a pro card was really hard to get, like incredibly hard to get, almost impossible. But you hear about this show coming to London, and there's pro cards available. Is this you? Like, you think, right now, this is the time where I can now put all my effort in and potentially get this pro card?
Yeah, the moment I realized that there were pro cars to win very close to home, because it's only like a 2-hour flight from my home. So a lot of pro cards were to be obtained, but I never thought it would be, that quickly obtained for myself, because it was the very first show I ever did under the NPC organization before the split happened. And I immediately won the overall there, and then I won my pro card. So for me, it went really quickly, because the same year I was qualified for the Olympia. So that was my ultimate goal. And then all of a sudden, within the same year that I realized I could win my pro card, I actually stood on the Olympia stage. So for me, it went really quickly. So I do agree that some people think that they can obtain pro cards too easy now compared to back in the day. But for me, it has still been, for me, it came at the exact right time, because I already trained for I think about 10 years back then, 10, 11 years already, done contests for many years as well. So it wasn't like I joined a show and won a pro card at the first try. I already did a lot of shows beforehand, and it just came at the exact right time for me to win that pro card.
Sure. I try to explain it to people over here that I don't think so. We had a federation called the UKBFF. I don't think the UKBFF had it right because they were like one pro card a year, and like females would never get pro cards. But in my opinion, I think they are a little bit too lenient now. I think there probably needs to be some middle ground where they say, listen, like you need to be a pro standard, or at least have the potential to be a good pro to get that card. But obviously, that leaves a bit of a grey area. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I do agree, because right now there are, of course, the elite pro shows like the Arnold Classic, the Olympia, or the Chicago Pro and Tampa Pro, stuff like that. Only the good guys win those shows. So the lower ranked pro shows, you don't even consider them really a true show anymore, because if you look at the physiques there, to me, the average physique on a pro show that isn't in elite pro shows doesn't look like a true professional bodybuilder most of the time. Sometimes you're like, how did you actually win your pro card to get here? So the rules regarding winning a pro card are sometimes a little too loose if they were more strict, because I do remember a few years ago, they actually in the Netherlands, and they actually had something like UKBFF, but then in the Netherlands, they would actually, if you had the top 5, but all 5 of those guys were bad, they still wouldn't allow them to go a step up on the competition, because none of them actually deserved to be better than that rank of show. So they don't do that right now, because if you're the only one who shows up for a pro card and you win, you simply win the pro card. That's kind of like how black and white it is. But sometimes there is a gray area, and I think the judges should be the ones to decide then if you are worth of a pro card or not.
Yeah, sure, I agree. So you win your pro card at the Royal London show, and you take some time off and you go and do the Chicago Pro. And the Chicago Pro sees you take first place and go to the Olympia. What was that feeling like? Because obviously things happen very, very fast for you.
Yeah.
And you were 25 when you stood on the Olympia stage, 24?
I was 24 when I won my pro card and 25 when I did the Olympia.
Yeah, so it was a very, very fast acceleration from pro card, pro win, and Olympia. So talk us through, obviously, that first show at Chicago, because that's a massive show. That's a very high tier show in the NPC IFBB Pro League. And then obviously there's a 4 or 5 week gap before the Olympia. So talk us through the prep for Chicago, winning Chicago, and then stepping on the Olympia stage.
Well, the mindset, first of all, going into the London show was like, okay, only amateur people are going to the show because no one is a pro yet. And I was really confident that I could have the best physique on that day. And then I wasn't super surprised that I won the pro card that day, because I knew what I looked like. But then you go to the Chicago Pro and all of those guys are a pro. So all of them have already won a show to win their pro card. So none of them are bad in my eyes. So when I was backstage, I was like, okay, this is very different from the previous shows I've done. Everybody pretty much looks good. Even some men's physique guys, I was wondering, are they classic physique? Are they men's physique? You couldn't even tell the difference because they are really big. So then I was super fortunate and surprised that I did win that Chicago Pro show, because then you're always wondering, okay, are they now looking for the most conditioned guy or the most complete guy, or, because all of them were very good. So it was very hard to pick a winner. Of course, from my point of view, the judges are already better at that, of course. So in that instance, they decided to put the more conditioned guy second, and me, who was much taller, looked bigger, more complete, they put me first. So that was, for me, a confirmation that they wanted to see the bodies from back in the 70s. But as we all know, every judging panel is different, because when I tried to bring the same package to the Olympia, which was very close to the Chicago Pro, they did not reward the physique the same way that they did at Chicago Pro. But at the same time, I also didn't hit my peak that well, so my conditioning was a little worse. But, if you're at the Olympia level, I realized you're backstage there, and then you can't even believe that you are one of the guys who you always looked up to. Like you're seeing them lying over there backstage, warming up, all of those familiar names you see on Instagram and YouTube, and you always wanted to meet in real life, and now you're one of the guys who belong in that class. So it feels very special. So also my coach back at that time told me, well, the most important thing is just enjoy the experience, just revel in the fact that you're actually at the Mr. Olympia itself, and then we'll just see after the results what we'll have to do to improve the physique for the next time. But that was a very special time for sure for me.
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. So you talked about missing your peak. What does a peak week look like for you? Are you somebody who goes, who depletes and loads? Are you somebody who front loads? How does a peak week look for you?
Well, for the Olympia, now I realize that wasn't the right one for me, but it looked like first depleting all of the sodium for a few weeks beforehand as well, lowering it, also lowering the water, and of course depleting myself from the diet already, because the diet was pretty much zero carbs for a few weeks anyway. And then the last few days before the show, you start to carb up a little bit after you know that you are sure to go below the weight limit. But for me, that was the case because I still didn't hit the weight limit, so I could pretty much eat carbs how much I wanted to. But the mistake we made is we loaded the salt and the carbs in the wrong way, because we started too early. Because I realized my body simply needs salt, and that's what was missing from the entire peak week. I only loaded with carbohydrates, and I looked great in the gym. But when I was at the show itself, I was like, well, my striations, my pump are all disappearing because there's no salt to actually contract the muscles. There's no salt to push the muscle against the skin. No matter how many carbs I ate, nothing really changed. And then it looked like I was holding water because I simply was flattened out because of the lack of sodium. So my whole electrolyte balance was out of whack, basically. And I realized that at the Romania Pro, I fixed this by actually keeping in the salt and increasing the salt on the day of the show, and at the same time lowering the carbohydrate loading protocol, just to be sure that I don't overspill myself, because conditioning for my physique is very important, because I didn't reach that at the Olympia. I reached it a little bit more at the Arnold, but still not completely. So at the Romania show, I had to reach the top conditioning I could, and the salt really played a big role in that.
Sure. So you learned a valuable lesson then.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So what about somebody who is starting off in this game, Wesley, and they say, well, how much cardio do you do? So how much cardio do you do for your preps, for example?
Well, you always do it in phases. So when you start a prep, you usually come from an off-season diet, and most off-season diets aren't very clean. So the first thing you do is get rid of all the junk food and keep the rest of the diet the same. You will notice you will lose weight right away. And after that, you start implementing a little bit of cardio every single time. So you want to keep a steady progress. And the moment you notice you hit a plateau, you up the cardio a little bit, you lower the carbs a little bit. And in the end, I did an hour of cardio in the morning, fasted every single day. And after the workouts, did some posing, which can count as cardio as well, for about half an hour. So you do about an hour of actual cardio, but to me, that's the maximum, because if you have to do more cardio than that, you didn't lower your diet enough, or you didn't start early enough. If you have to do 2 or 3 hours of cardio a day, to me, the prep didn't go as planned, because that's too much activity to warrant, keeping all the muscle as well. Because for me, if I do cardio, the legs need to move a lot, and for me, the legs are a weak point. So I need to limit the cardio as much as possible. So I started early and then do it in phases, more and more cardio towards the end.
Sure thing. So you get your win at Romania, you now qualify for 2020, and obviously that is in the balance at the moment, isn't it? We don't know whether that's happening or not happening. So yeah, we're not sure. So we'll move on to another topic then. Obviously, you're a gym owner, you're a business owner. You have a huge following on Instagram, which is of course another type of business as well. Somebody who is constantly busy, probably like yourself, because you've got your apparel company as well. What made you then go from sort of like I'm a bodybuilder to now I also need to be a businessman as well?
Well, that happened in a few phases as well, because first, and actually my mom told me to do this, I didn't have a YouTube channel, and that's where everything started. So at first was just someone working out in the gym, doing some contests for a few years. But people started to ask me, how do you do this exercise? What is good nutrition? Which supplements do you take? And my mom was like, why don't you just make videos about this, put them on YouTube so everybody can see what your thoughts are? So that's when I started. And immediately, of course, I made myself a classic bodybuilder on YouTube. That's what I identified myself with. And at that time, without classic physique, it was very popular. Everybody wanted to see classic bodybuilding again. So my channel grew pretty rapidly with videos. One of my starting videos actually reached more than 1 million very quickly without me even realizing that was ever possible. So I was very fortunate that that happened. So after a while, you gain enough subscribers to make people actually believe they want to support you, because I make the videos, but they want to support you in return. And it's a win-win situation because they don't have to give free money. They actually provide me with money to invest back in the channel, but they do get my workout apparel, the clothing, the coaching, etc. So I watched other YouTube channels and they all pretty much did the same thing. They first get a few thousand followers. I had 20,000, and that's when I started the clothing company, and very slowly it grew and grew out to a very, pretty good running company right now, with a lot of different clothing items and weightlifting belts and even supplements that you mentioned as well. So that really exploded over time. And every time that I did a contest, when I turned pro, the web shop exploded. When I did the Olympia, it exploded. So whenever my name gets mentioned in the online media, it's very good for my company as well. So you have to look at it as a business as well, because this is what I do for a living. So I can't just do this for fun. It really has to be a strategy behind it as well. So everything I do is, yes, to educate people, but at the same time, I do have to make some money somewhere to be able to keep doing this. Otherwise, I have to pick another job to provide for all the food you need for a bodybuilder. So that's pretty much how it went.
Sure. So at the moment, you've got in the Netherlands, obviously yourself, William Bonac.
Yeah.
I know Rolly Winker has an association with the Netherlands. I know he doesn't live there, but how big is bodybuilding in the Netherlands?
Well, it's getting bigger, but it was never really big to begin with. We do have a few shows, but they're not really popular. The mindset here of Dutch people isn't the same as people, for example, in the USA. When I walk around in a tank top in the USA, people start to compliment you. They ask you, how did you do this? And they pretty much are always nice. If you do the same thing here in the summer, because when it's hot, you don't want to wear a lot of clothing. So sometimes I do wear a tank top outside. Sometimes you do get nice people, but a lot of the times people also talk behind your back, and they don't really like to accept someone who looks like this walking outside. So it kind of tells me that the Netherlands isn't the same, isn't ready in the same way as other countries are for bodybuilding. Because in the Middle East, Hadi Chupan, I saw on his Instagram how he was received on the airport by his fellow countrymen, and that was amazing to see. And when William Bonac comes back, I didn't see it, but when he comes back as a second best bodybuilder in the world, he's not recognized here on media at all, not on a Dutch TV or something, which I do expect, because that's an incredible accomplishment, but it simply isn't recognized here in the Netherlands as much as I would like it to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that it's getting better? Do you think people are starting to become a little bit more aware? Like, I think this is one of the great things about social media, is people are starting to become more aware of their health and more aware that they need to be active, and weightlifting isn't all about just chucking stuff up and grunting and throwing stuff down. They are starting to become more aware. Do you think people are starting to become more aware?
Yes, I do think so, because the trend of becoming more healthy and fitness is never ending, and it's always increasing also here in the Netherlands. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't just want to identify myself as just a bodybuilder, but also someone with knowledge about nutrition and health and the proper supplements, helping people with all kinds of ailments. So that's what I try to present myself as, and people accept you more if you're more in the health theme compared to just a pure hardcore bodybuilder, because then people have a certain mindset about you, a certain stereotype they think you are. But if you all of a sudden talk to them and then they realize how much knowledge you have to actually achieve a physique like this, then they start to respect you more. So I think that's a shift that's happening still, but it's not fully happened yet.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And so obviously you got, so the apparel company was your first company, and then now you're going down the line of your supplements as well. So
Yes.
how is that going? What took you down that route as well?
Well, an opportunity arose actually before I did the Arnold Classic, and we actually recorded also a documentary about it, which still has to be released. But the company reached out to me, someone who has no affiliation with bodybuilding or supplements at all. So they just wanted to work with me because of my persona. They thought, well, I will be the brand. I will be the one representing the brand, but they will simply be the investors investing in the supplements because that can be very expensive to start with. So the first supplement we actually get is the whey isolate of a very good protein source. Because I believe there are so many supplement brands, there's no use in just putting out 5 or 6 different supplements right away. Just prove yourself with one first. Make sure you're the best in what you do in that one supplement. Once people are hooked to that, then you can slowly come out with more and more. But right now, it's pretty much going very great. But of course, with this interesting situation right now, it's more difficult to tell people about your brand because the gyms are closed, and normally that's the easiest way for us in the gyms itself to market our business basically. So I'm not one of those people who tries to brand it on every single video and every single post, because I only show it when I use it. But that's why we need the branding in supermarkets, for example, which we are going to as well. So in the Netherlands, we're really trying to aim for multiple markets. And for me, I try to target a serious lifter, but in the back office, they are also marketing to the average lifter who doesn't need the highest quality, but still do need a good quality protein or a good quality supplement that doesn't cost as much, but still has good enough quality to actually give them progress and is good for health, for example. So that's pretty much the direction we want to go.
Awesome. That's a good ethos and some good ethics there. So we've got some questions from the listeners, Wesley, and one of the questions was really interesting, actually. It said that it was in a 2-part, and it said that you're a young man who has a very humble sort of opinion and who is very driven. So can you talk us through sort of your mindset towards bodybuilding, towards business? So what is it that really drives you and inspires you and keeps you going every day?
Well, right now, it's the belief that you have in yourself. Because if I didn't believe that I could one day, for example, be the classic physique Mr. Olympia, I don't think I would work this hard to reach my goal. And for everybody, it's a different goal. For some people, it could be obtaining a pro card, for example. That could be their ultimate goal. It's just, for me, I know for myself I can achieve a certain goal and I'm just going for it every single day, while at the same time realizing it's not going to happen tomorrow. So in the meantime, just do your best. Set out multiple paths, for example, the apparel company, the supplement company, then to help support you to reach that ultimate goal. Because for me, you can only have one true goal that you want to reach, and then you have smaller goals around that to support you in reaching that goal. And one of those goals is, of course, to be financially stable, to be able to actually become relevant in the industry long enough to actually reach a goal like this, like winning the Classic Physique Olympia. So every time I wake up, I like the thought of working on my companies, because I know it's my passion, it's going to get me where I want. And I do really understand the question he asked, because before I had this goal, I woke up in the morning and I didn't even know what I was going to do that day. Like, what am I living for, basically? A lot of people have this question. They wake up and they're like, okay, why should I even go out of bed right now? I'm not motivated to do anything. Right now, it's very different. I know the sooner I get out of bed, the more I can get done. And then it's just fun to me right now. It always, every single day, it's a step further to my goal. So that's really my mindset. And there are a lot of steps in between, like having a good planning, which I lacked in the beginning as well, to make sure that you get all your content out, to make sure you reach your smaller goals as well. So you got to have a structure as well in everything you do, because if you don't have it laid out, it's going to be very difficult to know how to get to where you want. So it's a very broad answer, but that's because a lot of things are going on at the same time.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great answer. I think that's a great answer because you've given where you want to be, how you get about doing it, and as I said, setting those small goals which will take you up and up and up every day.
Yeah.
So you mentioned obviously when you wake up, you dream of being better. Do you have a routine that you do every day? Are you very structured in your routine? At like 6 o'clock you'll do this, 7 o'clock you'll do that?
No, the first thing, and that's why I like a prep as well, because when I'm in prep, the structure is even more there. Because in the off season, usually the structure revolves around the meals, because that's very easy. You always have to eat 6 meals a day, around 2 to 3 hours in between. So you always know, okay, those times are set. What am I going to do in between? So I always have I don't have it right here, but my notebook with all dates, my agenda basically, where I simply write down every single day, okay, this is what I want to have done tomorrow. So I write that down today, and then I know, I open it up, I know what I have to do that day, and I simply do that in between the meals. And always when you're, when you're doing, reading your DMs on Instagram or your emails, stuff will pile up automatically because there's always something more to do. So there's a routine there, but it's every day. It's different, but I do make sure there's something to do every single day. So always write down what you have to do for the next day. If there's nothing for you to write down, well, then you're not looking hard enough, because there's always something to do. So, but when I'm in prep, it's always you wake up, then you do an hour of cardio, then you have your breakfast, and then you do the rest. But then everything is way more strict to the T, basically. So every single time of day, you need to have a certain meal, so you know exactly how much time you have in between to do other things. And right now it's a little bit more loose because it's the off season. So you have a little bit more wiggle room in what you need to do, but you still write down what you need to do to get it done.
Sure. Brilliant. Brilliant. So another question is, how do you balance your relationship with work and prep?
Well, I have a unique situation because my girlfriend she owns this gym basically. And this is where my office is as well. So we spend a lot of time with each other, but at the same time, we do our own thing. So some people, some couples, they find it very difficult to be with each other 24/7. And it's being tested right now with this crisis basically. But for me, when she goes to the gym, I go with her, but I work on my own things as she provides the lessons, she does personal training, etc. And at the end of the day, we come together again and we just watch TV on the couch, for example. But in prep, I have to be aware of my own mindset, because towards the end, you may not be the most happy guy anymore. So when you're aware of this, you know, if she asks you something, you might want to wait before you answer a little bit, because the way you say it might actually not be, might be the way you actually mean to say it. So if you think about what you want to say, just, at the end of the day, it's always better if you can be nice to each other. That just feels way better. So you have to have the discipline to actually think about what you're going to say before you say it. And I think if you have a relationship where you can talk to each other, communicate with each other about anything, it's only going to be better for you, but for you guys both.
Sure, 100%. Another question is, will you stick to your guns and stay with the classic look, despite possibly having to get bigger in the class?
Yeah, I think I simply need to combine what I want to see nowadays with my vision of what classic bodybuilding is. So my vision is, of course, having a very big upper body, a big chest, big arms. But they now want to see also bigger legs, conditioning. So I have to bring those two if I ever want to win the Olympia, for example, combining it with my own vision. Because if you then combine all those two, I think I can be standing next to Chris Bumstead, who's the winner right now, and really go toe-to-toe with him on a lot of shots. I still have room to grow within my weight limit. It's not like I hit my weight limit already. There's still some room to grow. So I can actually gain muscles on the right places to look a lot better. And I can always get more conditioned. And who knows how much more room I will have to grow then. So I do think I can grow a lot more in the right places without losing the classic lines to make a very good chance of a high placing at the Olympia.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I agree. A couple of more simple questions. Do you follow do you follow a once a week muscle group plan, or do you train each muscle group twice a week?
It's different because I have a 4-day split. So I don't look at the days of the week. So every single day it might be something different. So every Monday is different. So I have 4 different body parts that I train, and then I have a day of rest, and then I repeat the same 4-day split. So sometimes it happens that I do train twice a week, but sometimes it's once a week. It really depends on how often that happens to be in that week. So it's a 4-day split. So every 5th day I train the same body part again.
So what is your split at the moment, Wesley?
Well, the first day, which is today actually, is back and biceps. Then the second day, chest and triceps. The third day is going to be legs. They are apart from the back days because otherwise they might intermingle with each other. And then the fourth day is an arm day. And I never actually had an arm day, at least not in a good while before. But I implemented it because I need to work on the triceps, and the biceps can never be big enough anyway. Arms are one of the few muscle groups that cannot be big enough. So I do an extra arm day and then a rest day, because I watch the arm day as a kind of an active rest day because you're not working any big muscle groups. So on the arm day itself, your legs, your back, your chest can actually rest. Then after the arm day, a rest day, and then repeat the 4 days again. And every single day I do log my lifts to make sure that I increase them every single time. So I really work out as hard as I can on that one day, because I did used to train 6 times a week, training everything twice a week. But I noticed that I simply couldn't recover from that much volume and that much work and that little rest in between. So I needed to do this a little differently. And now I notice that it works a lot better.
You don't see an arm day with many bodybuilders now on the push-pull leg split. So it's interesting to say that you've got an arm day and the reasons why. So that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, sure. And then we just finish off with a couple of like fun questions. So if you were to have dinner with 3 people in the bodybuilding or fitness industry, and it was your last dinner, who were those 3 people that you would choose?
Well, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger has to be there. Well, there's a lot of choices I can make here. And well, it's the last dinner of your life, right?
Yeah, it's the last dinner. You've only got 3 people in
That changes things.
Yeah, but no, they have to be involved in fitness. So let's say, for example, you have a fitness dinner and a family dinner. Who are the 3 people in fitness that you'd want in the last dinner?
Well, then, yeah, Arnold and Ronnie Coleman also. And the third one, let's see, maybe not a logical choice, but I think John Meadows. I watch him a lot, and I think he's very inspirational, and I think he would have some good advice for me before I go. I think he can be a very good company with the dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. He like his story is incredible. Where obviously he still gets himself absolutely pilled, and
Yes,
like some major health issues, doesn't he? And he still absolutely cracks on and does what he needs to do.
he's very inspirational. That's for sure. Yeah.
Sure, brilliant. And then finally, we asked for 3, obviously, because it's locked down and people have got a bit more time, 3 films that you would recommend to people to watch during this period.
Films. Oh, that's let's see.
Or series, films or series.
Oh, or series. Last series I watched was El Dragon. I don't know if you know that, on Netflix.
Yeah.
That's very good. I think Ozark is pretty good. And I haven't watched it completely yet, but I think Vikings is very good as well. A lot of seasons there, so a lot of time to watch it. So those would be 3 of the series I would recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I spoke to Bojana, the figure athlete, last week, and she also recommended Vikings as well. So I have to have a
cool.
look at it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. So finally, just to wrap up, Wesley, if anybody needs to get a hold of you for coaching, for advice, for to get you on podcasts, where and how can they find you?
Well, if they want to contact me, it's easiest to do it on Instagram at Wesley Vissers, or go to my YouTube channel, Vintage Genetics. And also, of course, the website for coaching, that's vintagegenetics.com. There's all the coaching and workout and nutrition plans on there.
Brilliant. Wesley, thank you ever so much for your time. That was a really, really good interview. Take care, and I hope you stay safe during this period.
I appreciate it. You too, man.
Thanks for joining us, and make sure you subscribe. Until next time, check out all the athletes' updates on pro female fitness, and for all your supplement needs, head over to www.mygymsups.com.